thought, why do we feel the need to fit into molds society creates for us? Imagine walking into a room and every glance you receive reduces you to a stereotype, a reflection of what people think you are and not who you actually are. Now imagine you live in a world where this is not just an occasional occurrence but an everyday reality. You constantly feel the weight of people's assumptions, and no matter what you do, it feels like you're playing a role just to fit in. This is the exact world Frantz Fanon explores in Black Skin, White Masks. It is not just about racism or colonialism, it is about how these forces infiltrate our minds, reshape our identities, and make us question our worth. Fanon's work is a psychological journey into understanding how oppression affects both the oppressed and the oppressor. Now we'll delve into the themes that Fanon has focused on. The first one is the role of language in oppression. Fanon says that language is never neutral. It is a weapon of control. When colonizers impose their language on the colonized, it is not just about communication, it is about domination. It is about making the colonized feel that their native languages and their cultures are inferior. This is the exact same thing that I have already discussed in Edward Said's Orientalism and Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. Now imagine a child in a colonized country attending school. The teacher says, "Stop speaking your mother tongue, it's uncivilized. Instead, speak French or English, because it is the language of progress." And over time, the child begins to associate their native language with backwardness and the colonizer's language with success. Consider how English became the dominant language in India during British colonial rule. English was associated with education, success, and progress. Many Indians aspired to learn English to secure government jobs or gain social mobility, often at the expense of their native languages like Hindi, Tamil, or Bengali. This created a divide where speaking English became a marker of superiority, while speaking native languages was seen as backward and inferior. Think of workplaces where employees feel pressured to speak only in English, even if their mother tongue is more comfortable. This demonstrates how language continues to reinforce power structures even today. This happens on a large scale. For instance, in Martinique, where Fanon was from, Creole was spoken by the people but considered lesser than French. Families discouraged their children from speaking Creole because it was seen as a barrier to upward mobility. But in doing so, they unintentionally disconnected their children from their cultural roots. Fanon argues that language shapes how we see ourselves. When you are forced to abandon your language, you are also forced to abandon a part of your identity. This is why reclaiming language is such an important part of decolonization. The second point is internalized racism. Fanon deeply delves into how colonized people internalize racist attitudes, a process he calls epidermalization. This is when people are made to feel their skin color defines their worth. For example, Fanon discusses Mayot Capicia, a black woman who wrote a book about her love for a white man. He argues that her work reflects how internalized racism leads black people to view themselves through the lens of white superiority. Capicia's desire for a white man is not just romantic. It is rooted in the belief that whiteness equals value and status. Fanon reveals the psychological violence inflicted by racism. It makes black people question their worth, leading to feelings of self-hatred and a longing to be white. This is not a personal feeling. It is the result of systematic oppression designed to dehumanize. The next point is double consciousness and living with two selves. Fanon explores what he calls double consciousness, a term he borrowed from W.E.B. Du Bois. This is the idea that colonized people see themselves through two lenses. First one is their own, and the second one is the colonizer's lenses. Imagine a young man from a colonized country working in a city controlled by colonizers. At home, he is loud, carefree, and speaks his native language. But when he goes to work, he speaks the colonizer's language, adjusts his behavior, and suppresses his natural self to fit into their expectations. This constant switching creates an internal conflict. Who am I really? The person I am at home or the person I am at work? Fanon describes this as a kind of splitting of the self. It is exhausting and damaging because it forces the colonized person to live a fragmented life, constantly questioning their identity. The fourth point is the desire to be white. One of Fanon's most striking arguments is about the psychological effects of colonialism. He explains how colonized people begin to internalize the idea that whiteness is superior. They see whiteness as the standard for beauty, intelligence, and success. For example, think of skin lightening creams that are marketed in many post-colonial societies. These products promise lighter skins as a way to achieve success or attractiveness. But why? It is because colonialism planted the idea that lighter skin is better. But this is not just about appearance. It is also about behavior and culture. Colonized people often feel pressure to adopt the colonizer's language, dress, and mannerisms to be accepted. Fanon argues that this desire to be white is a form of self-erasure. It is a way of rejecting one's own identity to fit into a system that was never designed to include them. He says liberation comes when we reject these false ideals and embrace who we really are. The next point is the psychological impact of racism. Fanon says that racism doesn't just oppress physically, it leaves deep psychological wounds. He describes how black individuals are reduced to stereotypes and treated as objects, not as people. Now imagine walking into a room and hearing someone say, "Look, a black man." Not your name, not your achievements, just a label based on your skin color. Over time, this constant reduction to a stereotype creates what Fanon calls epidermalization. This means people start seeing themselves only through their skin color because that is all the world sees. Fanon explains how this affects mental health. It creates feelings of inferiority, self-doubt, and even self-hate. It is a form of psychological violence that dehumanizes the individual. Fanon critiques the work of Octave Manoni, who wrote Prospero and Caliban, The Psychology of Colonization. Manoni argued that colonized people have a dependency complex and need colonizers for guidance. Fanon countered this by showing that colonialism creates this dependency through systematic oppression, not because of inherent psychological traits. The next point is breaking free from the masks. The title Black Skin, White Masks is symbolic. The term black skin represents the colonized people's identity, while the term white mask represents the roles they play to survive in a world dominated by the colonizer. Fanon argues that true liberation comes from when we take off the mask and embrace our authentic selves. This is not easy. It requires confronting painful truths about how we have been shaped by oppression. For example, think about the Harlem Renaissance. Black artists, writers, and musicians like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston celebrated their culture and rejected the idea that they needed to conform to white standards of art and beauty. This was more than art. It was a declaration of self-worth and identity. Fanon reminds us that liberation is not just about political independence. It is about psychological freedom. It is about reclaiming our minds and our identities. With this, Fanon calls to reclaim humanity. He ends his work with a call to action. He challenges us to dismantle the systems of oppression that reduce people to stereotypes. He asks us to redefine what it means to be human, not based on race, culture, or power, but on shared dignity and equality. His work is a reminder that the fight for freedom is not just external, it is deeply personal and psychological. So, what does it mean to reclaim your identity? How do we challenge the masks society forces us to wear? Fanon invites us to reflect and take action. If this journey through black skin, white masks resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into powerful ideas. Until next time, let's keep questioning and growing. Thank you.